Hello everyone, I am your educator Amit Ajmani and I welcome you all to Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes. I hope all my dear students are doing well and keeping up fit and fine, and of course you will be studying well. So let's continue with this particular class in which we are going to study about the new chapter, Management of Natural Resources. First of all, what are natural resources? The resources given to us by nature. Anything in the environment which can be used is called a natural resource. Now, what exactly is meant by management of natural resource? It is a system of controlling the use of natural resources in such a way so as to avoid their wastage and to use them in the most effective way. This is called management of natural resources. Now, what are the various provisions and processes involved in the management of natural resources? It includes the sustainable use and conservation of our natural resources like the forest or the water bodies or the wildlife or the fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, etc. It also includes protection, upliftment, and scientific management of all our natural resources so that we can maintain their optimum level and we can derive the sustainable benefits not only for the present generation but also for the future generations. We already are aware of this term sustainable development. What exactly is sustainable development? It is the development which meets the current basic human needs and also preserves the resources for the needs of future generations. That is called sustainable development, and that is what we need to do. Why? Why is it so? Why we are doing all these efforts? Why we are planning and working out to manage our resources? The reasons are many. Let us see what are the reasons. The first and the foremost important reason is that the resources of the earth are limited and the human population has been on a rise exponentially, because of which the demand for these resources, that demand is also increasing day by day. So if we are not going to manage our resources, then in that case we will not be able to sustain long. So the proper management will make sure that the natural resources are used judiciously so that they can be able to fulfill the needs of the present generation and also should last for the generations to come, right? The second reason why we tend to manage our resources is that the proper management of natural resources takes into consideration the long term view. And if we have the long term view, it will prevent the exploitation of these resources to the hilt for short term gains. Clear? The third reason or the objective why we need to manage our resources is that the proper management can ensure equitable distribution of natural resources so that these resources should not remain in the hands of a few rich and influential people, but all the people can benefit from the development of these resources. One more reason is that the proper management of resources will take into consideration the damage caused to the environment during the extraction or the use of the natural resources. And once we realize what activity is causing what kind of damage to the environment, we can find the ways and means to minimize this kind of damage. So this is why we need to manage the resources. Now, how to manage? We have been learning this from the past so many years. 3 R's. We simply need to follow the 3 R's to save the environment, to save the resources. What are these 3 R's? You all know. First R stands for reduce. We need to make reduction in the usage of resources. We have to cut short our resources usage so that they should not get wasted. For example, we should not let the water to go wasted just because of the carelessness of remaining the taps open. We should switch off whenever we do not require the lights and fans. We should make sure that we are using less of the resources in order to make them last long. The second R stands for recycle. All those products which are non-biodegradable, they, if they can be recycled, they should be done so. Why? Because they are non-biodegradable. If we are not recycling them, otherwise also they are going to sustain in the environment. So why not to use them in different form? For example, we can recycle plastic, we can recycle paper, we can recycle glass or the metals. And the third R stands for reuse. If possible, we need to make sure that there are certain things which can be used again and again. For example, if we have emptied some plastic bottle, we can just wash it down and we can use it for storing some other thing like jams or pickles, right? So these are the 3 R's which we need to follow while we are managing our resources, while we are making an effort in order to sustain our resources for longer time. Now, let us talk about forests and wildlife. What is a forest? A large area of land on which trees and other plants grow naturally. That is called forest. And we know what exactly wildlife is. All the wild animals and birds which live in a forest. That is called wildlife. It includes animals like lions, tiger, elephants, deer, snakes, etc. These plants and animals of a forest, they are known as the flora and fauna respectively, right? And because in a forest we find a large number of species of flora and fauna, that is of plants and animals, that is why forests are also called as biodiversity hotspots. Why they are called so? Because of the large variety of flora and fauna found in the forests. When we are talking about the management of forests and wildlife, our purpose, our aim, our objective is to conserve the biodiversity which is present in a particular area, to conserve the biodiversity which we have inherited. Why? Because the loss of this biodiversity will lead to the loss of ecological stability of the forest and the loss of the balance which is created between the various ecosystems, right? And this is why there are certain steps which need to be taken. In India, we have got 581 protected areas which cover 4.7% of the land surface. These protected areas are the part of land or sea which are specially dedicated to the protection and maintenance of biological diversity. In total, there are 89 national parks and 492 wildlife sanctuaries in India. Now you need to learn a few names. They are less of a science and more of a general knowledge questions. Kanha, Gir, where are they situated? Why they are famous for what they are made for? Right? So this you need to remember. You will get in your exams. Clear? Now, a person with an interest or concern in something is called a stakeholder. So when it comes to forests, there are various stakeholders who are interested or who are concerned about forests. Who are these people and why they are so concerned and interested in forests? Let us see. The first are the people who live in and around the forest. They are the stakeholders. Why? Because they are dependent on forest to some extent. For the forest produce the products in order to lead their life. They take bamboo, they take wood, they take everything for their day-to-day survival. So these are the first stakeholders who have a keen interest in forests. The second stakeholder is the forest department of the government, who owns all this forest land, who controls the resources from the forest. And why they are stakeholders? Because these forests are a big source of revenue. The government, it sells these forest products and gains a lot of revenue from it. The third stakeholders are the industrialists. Why they are interested? Because these industrialists will use various forest products for their factories. For example, wood is required in paper industry, in furniture industry. For example, tendu leaves are used for making beedis. Numerous industries are based which are running only when the raw material comes from the forests, right? So that is why industrialists are also inclined. The fourth stakeholder are the forest and wildlife activists. These are the people who want to see the forest in their pristine form, original form, because they want to study the relationships, they want to study the associations, they want to study the past and the future, they want to study the past in order to relate the future, right? What exactly were the things that we are seeing in the present which were not there in the past? That is what exactly these people want to see. That is why they want the forest in their pristine form. So these are the four stakeholders who have keen interest and concern regarding the forests, right? Now among these, the industrialists are considered to be the most inhumane or the worst concerned people about forests, because they are taking all the forest products just in the form of raw material in order to make profits. They are not bothered whether the forests are getting replenished or not, whether their activities are going to harm the flora and fauna of that particular area, because for them the forest and their products are just the raw material. And if these raw materials are exhausted in any one particular place, they are just going to wind up and go to some other place in order to get that raw material. Getting my point? So this is the reason why industrialists cause maximum damage to the forests. Now there are certain people who have contributed for the protection and conservation of forest and wildlife. So let us try to relate a few main incidences where human intervention have saved the forests. There are three instances mainly that we'll be studying. First is the case of Khejri trees. Now there is a Bishnoi community in Rajasthan state of India, and for these people belonging to Bishnoi community, conservation of forests and wildlife has been a religious belief for them. In 1731, there was one Amrita Devi Bishnoi who led a group of 363 people. They all sacrificed even their lives for the protection of khejri trees in Khejrali village, which is near a place called Jodhpur in Rajasthan. We need to learn Amrita Devi Bishnoi. We need to learn khejri trees. These two are important. We will get question in exam related to this. And their contribution has been so regarded that the government has recently instituted an award by the name of Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation in the memory of Amrita Devi Bishnoi. Fine. So this is a quite prestigious award. So this is the first case where Amrita Devi Bishnoi and 363 other people sacrificed their lives in order to protect the khejri trees from Khejrali village near Jodhpur in Rajasthan. The second incident, you all are aware, you must have studied in your SST also, the Chipko Andolan. Chipko is hugging, just sticking to it, hug the trees movement. Now this Chipko Andolan, it originated in a remote village called Reni in Garhwal, which is high up in the Himalayas, and this is something related to 1970s, early 1970s. Over there, as per the incident goes, that there was a contractor who wanted to just cut off the area over there, all the plants, all the trees, and one day, when all the males had been to their work, the contractor secretly went out to cut, but the women protested, and before the contractor could even touch the trees, all the women of the village, they hugged the trees. Why? That they stood in between, that if you want to cut the trees, you have to cut us also. So after facing such a protest, then they were able to protect the trees, and side by side they were able to prevent alienation in their area. This particular movement, it spread to other villages also very soon, and it led to a saving of protection of so much of area. Another example in itself is quite motivating. This is the case of degraded sal forest in Aravalli range. Actually, in 1972, the West Bengal Forest Department, they actually started a very novel scheme in order to revive the degraded sal tree forests, and this they wanted to do by involving the local people. So a beginning was made in this Arabri forest range, which lies in the Midnapore district. There they had a very far-sighted forest officer called A.K. Banerjee. He involved the villagers of the area around the forest, and within a span of just 10 years, he was able to restore 1272 hectares of badly degraded sal forest, which is huge. And how he was able to do it? He asked the people to contribute, and in return for help which they are doing in protecting the forest, he just allowed the villagers, not only he provided them with employment in both silviculture and harvesting operations of the forest, but he also allowed them to have the 25% of the final harvest produced. And they were also allowed to collect firewood and fodder from the forest area on a nominal payment. So it was a win-win situation for both. the farmers as well as the forest department. So they all acted and participated very enthusiastically, and because of that active and willing participation of the local people living around the forest, these degraded sal forest of Arabri range, they become thick and green within 10 years only, right? So Amrita Devi Bishnoi or Rainy Village Hug the Tree movement or Arabri Range A.K. Banerjee Sal Forest, all these are the examples of exemplary courage and exemplary feeling in order to protect the natural resources, right? Now, how to conserve the wildlife? If we need to conserve the wildlife, large scale poaching of wild animals who are residing in the forest, these poachings, these killings, these huntings by man, this is a serious threat to the survival of these organisms and animals and bird species, right? And if this is done, it disturbs the whole food chain in which these animals are a part of it, because of which there are undesirable consequences for the whole ecosystem. And conservation of wildlife is must, it needs to be done in order to maintain the ecological balance in nature and to preserve the gene pool. But how it needs to be done? In our country, laws are made, but unfortunately, they are not implemented. So, laws should be made to impose a total ban on poaching or capturing of any animal or bird belonging to an endangered species. It should not be made. They are already made. But the problem is they are not implemented. So, such laws should not remain on paper only. They should be enforced severely and strictly in order to have the betterment of the wildlife. Another way to conserve the wildlife is that the natural habitats of wild animals and birds should be preserved by establishing more national parks and sanctuaries throughout the country. We already have a few, we need to increase the number. Another way, another step can be that the government department which is concerned with the conservation of wildlife, they should conduct a periodic survey in all their forest and national parks and sanctuaries, so that they should have an idea of the population of all the species of the wild animals and birds which exist in these national parks and sanctuaries, right? So in any case, there are any times of distress like floods or famines or droughts, then these animals can be helped. Fine. So these are a few steps which can be taken in order to conserve wildlife. If some type of wild animals and birds are in abundance today, then also we need not to be casual. Their indiscriminate killing should not be allowed by the forest authorities just because they are in plenty at the moment. We need to pay special attention to the conservation of endangered species of wild animals and birds. Otherwise, they are going to extinct altogether. The unauthorized felling of forest trees done for timber trade and fuel woods, that should be curbed immediately. Why? Because these forests are the natural habitats of the wild animals and birds. And if these natural forests are depleted, they are destroying the natural habitat of wild animals and birds, then these organisms and animals and birds will be exposed to the cruelty of not only man as well as nature. Clear? And in case of government authorized felling of forest trees, then in that case government needs to make sure that for every acre of forest cut down, an equal area of land should be planted with sapling of trees, so that we may compensate for this loss. So these are the various steps that needs to be taken while we are planning to conserve our wildlife, right? So when we are talking about our natural resources, we first talked about the forests, we talked about the wildlife. Next, we'll be talking about water. We know that water is the basic necessity for all forms of life, not only human beings, but all the animals as well as plants. Now, important thing is there are certain areas, some certain parts in our country which have good rainfall, good resources of water, large number of rivers, big rivers, but unfortunately, there are certain parts which suffer from chronic water shortage. It is because of this reason that it becomes necessary that we need to have proper management of available water so that we can not only have an equitable distribution of water for all the people in all the parts of the country, but we can also provide with such situations where nobody is affected because of lack of water. Fine. Now the problem is that we have very good rainfall in various areas of our country. But despite those good rains, we are not able to meet the demands for water of all the people. Why so? The foremost reason understood. Our population is very large, it is increasing very rapidly, agreed. But it is also because of lack of sufficient vegetation cover on ground. Now, what happens when there is insufficient vegetation cover? Only a little rainwater seeps into the ground and gets stored as groundwater. Another problem is that the high yielding varieties of crops that we are using nowadays, they require much more water for irrigation as compared to the previous varieties. Another reason is that the discharge of untreated sewage and the industrial waste done into the water bodies like rivers and lakes, they reduce the availability of usable water. One of the important contributory factor is also the changing lifestyle of people, especially in urban areas. They are consuming more and more water. They are being more and more careless. So we need to conserve water, and for that one way is by making dams. Now in order to make proper use of river water, these dams are constructed across the river so that we may regulate the flow of water. We have so many dams already built across so many rivers in our country. Fine. And the large reservoir of a dam stores a huge amount of water which is brought in by the flowing river. This stored water is allowed to flow downstream at the desired rate. So dams are the largest reservoirs of water, and because we allow it as per our own will, that is why they ensure the shortage of adequate water for irrigation as well as for generating electricity. Especially the people who are living close to the water resources, they are always benefited by growing water intensive crops like sugarcane and rice. Right? There has been an example quoted that the Indira Gandhi Canal, it has brought greenery to considerable areas of Rajasthan. So this is how dams and canals, they can work wonders. There are so many advantages from dams. Let us see what are the various advantages. Water from a dam is used for irrigation in fields through a network of canals. And dams ensure round the year water supply to the crop fields. These dams help to raise the agricultural production. Water from these dams is supplied to the people in towns and cities through pipelines. after suitable treatment. So therefore, the construction of dams ensures continuous water supply in the region. That is also one of the very important advantage of constructing dams. Next advantage is that the falling or flowing water from the dam is used for generating electricity. We already know that this water rushes down the dam and it turns the turbines, which further runs the electric generators, and hence electricity is produced. And the electricity which is produced by the flowing water, right, that is called hydroelectricity. We have various advantages of dams, but there are certain issues, there are certain problems also, because of which these same dams are criticized, they are opposed. Mainly we have got three types of problems. One are the social problems. Now what exactly happens is that if we want to construct a high rise dam, obviously we need to clear off a lot of area, and for that a large number of human settlements, they are submerged in the water of large reservoir formed by the dam, and because of this reason many people are rendered homeless. So this is one of the major social problem related with the construction of dams in a particular area. It needs to be resolved. It is very much necessary that all the people who are displaced from the dam site, they should be given adequate compensation by the government so that they can be rehabilitated so as to start their life afresh. Second problem that comes with dams, for which dams are opposed, are the environmental problems. If we are going to construct a high rise dam on a particular river, it contributes to not only deforestation but also loss of biodiversity. Why? Because once again, if you are building a dam, it requires a lot of area, and because of this, a vast variety of flora and fauna gets submerged in the water of large reservoir formed by the dam, and it disturbs the ecological balance. Third, one more issue is still left, because of which these dams are criticized, and these problems are the economic problems. Obviously, if we are going to construct such a high rise dam, it involves the spending of huge amount of public money. Now, whether we are actually taking out the proportionate benefits is a questionable thing. Is the electricity which is generated there worth so much of spending? Are the dams actually able to ensure better advantages? That is still questionable and debatable, and that is why there are so many dams which were opposed. We have already seen few oppositions. For example, when Tehri Dam was going to be constructed on river Ganga, it was opposed. Similarly, people go against the raising the height of Sardar Sarovar Dam on the river Narmada. The movement was called Narmada Bachao Andolan, means save the Narmada movement, right? All these protests, all these oppositions were actually related to these above causes only. Clear? Now the next way to conserve water is very simple and very important. That is rainwater harvesting. We can do rainwater harvesting, and you will be surprised that the rural India people in their time also they knew and they implemented a large number of water collecting methods by which they were able to capture as much rainwater as possible which had fallen on their land. There were so many methods used by the rural people or the farmers depending upon the state and the conditions and the various areas. Some of them were digging of small pits and lakes, or building of small earthen dams or embankments, or the construction of dikes, that is the long walls of earth to trap water, or the construction of sand and limestone reservoirs, or setting up of rooftop water collecting units. So these were the things which they were already doing in their times. And all these methods to collect and save the rainwater, they actually recharge the depleting groundwater levels. So that is why water harvesting is of utmost importance, and it is an age old practice in India. It is not new. In rural areas, this process of rainwater harvesting, it is very beneficial. Why so? Because it not only increases the agricultural production but also the income of the farmers, and a blessing in disguise that it mitigates the effect of droughts and floods, and it increases the life of downstream dams and reservoirs. So it's a blessing in disguise for the farmers. Now these water harvesting techniques which were used dependent upon the location where they were to be used, let us try to relate a few ancient water harvesting structures which were used in different rural regions of our country, and importantly and surprisingly, they are still in use. These are the states, and these are the various ancient water harvesting systems. These are the names of those systems. In Rajasthan, the system used was Khadin, tanks and nadis. In Maharashtra, it was bandharas and tals. In Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, it is the bundis. In Bihar, it is ahars and pines. In Himachal Pradesh, it is the kuls which were used as ancient water harvesting systems. In Jammu region, ponds were used. In Tamil Nadu, it is the Arish or the tanks. In Kerala, we have got surangams, and in Karnataka, the ancient local water harvesting system was kattas. You need to learn this table. You need to know where which ancient water harvesting system belongs to, right? Now, if we are doing the rainwater harvesting, the best way is to recharge the groundwater. Why? Because there are so many advantages of groundwater. What are these? Number one, the water stored in ground does not evaporate. This is the very first advantage. Second advantage of water stored in ground is that it spreads out to recharge wells, and it provides moisture for crops over a wide area. Another advantage is that the water which is stored in ground, it does not promote breeding of mosquitoes. If this water is remains stagnant when it is collected in ponds or artificial lakes, then in that case it will act as a breeding ground of mosquitoes, which the groundwater does not. Very importantly, if the water is stored in ground, it remains protected from any kind of contamination done either by humans or animal waste, one of the major advantages. And this water which is stored in ground is utilized for the benefits of local population. So this is the reason why the water stored in ground is always better, and this is what we need to work out for. So this was all about water. Next we'll be talking a bit about fossil fuels, that is coal and petroleum. We know that coal and petroleum, these are called fossil fuels. These are the natural resources which are very important sources of energy for us. How? We use coal in our houses as a fuel. In our industry, it is used to generate electricity at thermal power plants. Talking about petroleum, very important products, petrol and diesel, which we use as fuels in transportation to run our vehicles, scooters, motorcycles, car, buses, trucks, trains, ships, etc. They all are obtained from petroleum. Another products are kerosene and LPG, that is the liquefied petroleum gas. We know that it is used as a domestic fuel for cooking food, right? So there are so many advantages of coal and petroleum. Now we know that these are fossil fuels. So how they were formed? They were formed from the degradation of biomass of plants and animals respectively, buried deep under the earth millions of years ago. Coal is obtained from the coal mines which is dug into the earth, and petroleum is obtained by digging oil wells deep in the earth, right? Through these oil wells, we obtain crude petroleum oil, which is then separated into various fuels like LPG, petrol, diesel, kerosene, heavy oil, wax, asphalt, so many products which are obtained from petroleum by the process known as fractional distillation. We have already studied this process before also. It is the process of fractional distillation through which the various components of petroleum are separated out, right? Now the problem is increasing population, increasing consumption, and as per an estimate, the rate at which we are consuming these resources. According to this rate, the known petroleum reserves are only going to last for about 38 to 40 years from now only. And the present known coal reserves, they are going to last for another 200 years only. Okay, I agree. 200 years as per you, you'll be like, sir, I won't be there, but your future generations will be. Obviously, you are going to get married and have children, and they are going to get married and have children. And by the time your grandson and granddaughter they are born, the coal will already be gone. Petroleum just in your next generation only. So that is the main cause of concern, and that is the main reason why we are focusing so much on sustainable development. We are so focusing so much on the need to manage our resources, because once these fossil fuels are exhausted, we are not going to get them in the very near future. Why? Because their formation is an extremely slow process. It takes hundreds and thousands of years for these fossil fuels to get formed. Therefore, we need to conserve coal and petroleum resources of the earth. How? Once again, try to reduce our consumption so that they can last long. What else can you do? You can take various steps to conserve these energy resources. Switch off the lights, fans, TVs, and all the other electrical appliances in your house when they are not needed. Trust me, it is going to save a lot of energy when it comes to the whole society or the whole state or the whole country. Individual level participation is required. We all need to contribute a bit from our part so that it may result in a huge difference. Next way is we can use energy efficient electrical appliances. They're also going to save lot of energy. For example, we can use CFLs, that is compact fluorescent lamps, and fluorescent tube lights rather than using the traditional filament type electric bulbs. Why so? Because the consumption of electric bulbs is very high as compared to CFLs, right? And the funny part is, the best part is that the amount of light produced is probably more in the case of CFLs, as compared to the filament type electric bulbs. So we can use efficient electrical appliances which are energy efficient. Then a bit painful but a very important way is we need to change our daily routines. We should use stairs to climb at least up to 3 floors of a building rather than taking a lift, because it is also going to save electricity. We should use pressure cookers. When I'm saying we, means our mothers, our family members as a whole. In general terms, pressure cookers should be used for cooking food. Why? Because it saves a lot of fuels, and we are doing the cooking either in the villages through kerosene or in our towns and cities through our LPG. Good quality stoves should be used to burn fuels like kerosene and cooking gas, so that maximum possible amount of energy and heat can be obtained. We need to look out for alternate sources of energy like solar cookers can be a good choice in order to cook food whenever possible. We should use biogas as domestic fuel, right? This should be encouraged in rural areas because biogas is a boon to the farmers. Quite importantly, we need to cut down on our fuel. For that, we can do the carpooling, we can share the cabs, and we can use bicycles for covering shorter distances, so that we can save this very, very, very precious commodity called fuel like petroleum, etc. Public transport system best in the cities, it should be improved, it should be used by the people, so that people should prevent their commutation in the personal vehicle. This is also going to save a lot of our petrol and diesel. We need to have fuel efficient engines in our motor vehicles. It should be designed so that they should reduce the consumption of fuels. So all these things are the various steps we can and we should take in order to conserve these energy sources. Now, talking about fossil fuels, one important drawback of fossil fuel is the pollution which is caused by burning these fossil fuels like coal and petroleum based fuels. We know that these coal and petroleum fossil fuels, they have been formed from biomass, right? Therefore, in addition to carbon and hydrogen, they also contain nitrogen and sulfur elements. So when these fossil fuels are burnt, then these nitrogen and sulfur elements, they are also undergoing combustion, due to which products like carbon dioxide, water, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides are formed. In case this burning, this combustion is taking place in insufficient supply of air, then some carbon monoxide is also produced. Now, what are the harmful effects of all these? Let us try to relate one by one. All the products which are produced by the combustion of fossil fuels, only one product out of all the products of combustion of fuels, only one, that is water, is harmless and it does not have any kind of negative effect on the environment. Otherwise, all the other products, they are harmful and they are going to pollute the environment. How? Let us see. Sulfur dioxide, which was liberated, it directly attacks the lungs, causing bronchitis and other diseases. This sulfur dioxide also dissolves in rainwater to form acidic rain. And this acidic rain, it damages trees, plants, aquatic organisms, buildings and metal structures. Along with sulfur dioxide, Nitrogen oxide and nitrogen dioxides are also produced, which also contribute to this acid rain, and they attack the breathing system and involved in creating and forming the acid rain. Carbon monoxide, we are already aware, is a very poisonous gas, because when it gets into our bloodstream, it actually combines with the hemoglobin present in the RBCs in the blood, due to which a compound called carboxyhemoglobin is formed. This carboxyhemoglobin, it actually reduces the oxygen carrying capacity. It stops the red blood cells from carrying oxygen from lungs to the rest of the body. Obviously, this is going to cause suffocation. And if we inhale too much carbon monoxide, it may lead to death. Another product which is formed by the combustion of fossil fuels is carbon dioxide. It is not poisonous, agreed, but it is a greenhouse gas. In the previous chapter, we studied in detail that how this carbon dioxide causes greenhouse effect. It traps the infrared rays of the sun which are falling on the earth, right? Because of which the global temperatures are rising. We are facing global warming for the past so many years. You must have heard so many times, so many people talking about global warming and deforestation and global warming and deforestation. Simple reason is that nowadays it is a major cause of concern, because once the global temperature, the way it is increasing, that day is not far, then where it is going to reach the unacceptable levels. That is what we are just frightened about. And the burning of more and more of fossil fuels is actually increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, due to which greenhouse effect is increasing steadily, slowly but surely, and it is leading to global warming. So this is all the pollution caused by burning of fossil fuels. Now we need to use our fossil fuels judiciously. Why? Because they are limited in their amount, and the rate at which we are consuming them, they are going to get exhausted soon. Second reason is that the products of combustion of fossil fuels very harmful for the environment. They pollute the environment in various ways that we have seen just above. So we need to be a bit precautious and judicious while we are using the natural resources. We need to manage ourselves in such a way that we can make optimum utilization. Got it? This is all about management of natural resources. And again, before ending up the class, we need to brush up the whole of the topic. In 5 minutes, we need to relate what we have studied in this chapter. And for that, let me once again change my marker color so that I should be able to highlight what you are supposed to read and what you are supposed to learn. You need to relate the difference between these two. Fine, let us see. What are natural resources? Anything which can be used given by nature is called a natural resource. We are managing it, right? This management includes lot many things. It includes protection, upliftment, and scientific management, the sustainable use and conservation, etc., etc. What is the need for using our resources? Because the resources are limited, right? So we have to do sustainable development, and this sustainable development and the management can be done by these three R's. Very important: reduce, recycle, reuse. Right? Out of this, one more question may be asked, that it is better to reuse than to recycle. Why so? Because even recycling is going to require some energy. So it is always better if we can reuse the things directly rather than first of all recycling them and then using them the second time. Next, we talked about the forest and wildlife. The species are called flora and fauna, and we need to relate that forests are called the biodiversity hotspots because of the large variety of flora and fauna species found there. There are 89 national parks, 492 wildlife sanctuaries in India. We need to relate. We have got 581 protected areas. We need to remember, right? Next, various stakeholders. We studied about the four stakeholders which are dependent or concerned or interested in forests. These are the inhabitants, the rural local people who live in and around the forests. Second one were the forest department for revenue generation. Third one were the industrialists for their own selfish motives to take the raw material for their businesses, and the nature enthusiasts, the forest and wildlife activists. These are the four stakeholders. Now this part is very important. The various incidences where human intervention saved forests. First, we related Bishnoi community in Rajasthan. Amrita Devi Bishnoi, along with 363 people in 1731, sacrificed their lives for protecting khejri trees in Khejrali village near Jodhpur in Rajasthan. The award announced by the government is Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation. Next was the Hug the Tree movement, that is the Chipko Andolan, started by the women in Reni in Garhwal in early 1970s, where the women hugged the trees and saved them from cutting down by the hands of the contractor. Very important, 1972, A.K. Banerjee, Aravali Forest Range, Midnapur district, degraded sal forests. These things that I have circled, this you need to learn. And with the help of people, 1272 hectares of badly degraded sal forest, they were able to be recovered within a span of 10 years. Fine. Next, we talk in general terms how to conserve the wildlife and what are the various steps in order to conserve wildlife. Just reading part, nothing much to learn in this, right? You can relate it. Then water for all, basic necessity of life, and the reason based on the fact that why we are not able to use and provide water as a resource to everyone. Clear? Normal general terms. Dams. Now this is important. In dams, number one, how dams are advantageous. Number two, what are these are the advantages of dam, right? We get electricity, we get regular supply of water, etc. etc. Why these dams are opposed? Very important. The three reasons. Number one are the social problems. The people, they are displaced but not exactly rehabilitated. Second are the environmental problems, that lot much area is to be cut in order to make a dam in which lot of flora fauna of that particular area is affected. Then economic problems, lot of money is required. Very important this part, that this Sardar Sarovar Dam on the river Narmada, that was opposed because the people were against the raising of height of the Sardar Sarovar Dam. It was on river Narmada. Tehri Dam was on river Ganga. This is what you need to remember. Rainwater harvesting, quite important, and in this rainwater harvesting we need to relate this. In which state, what were the various ancient water harvesting systems? This is now the only part where you will find some problem and you need to focus and learn. Otherwise, till now, it was all very general going on. Only this is the part where some learning, some concentration, some effort will be required as compared to the other things. Why groundwater is better than the normal resources? Then we talked about coal and petroleum, and very importantly we talked about the pollution caused by coal and petroleum. Then we discussed about the various steps to conserve the energy resources, all very generalized steps. So just read them 2 times. I think that is more than sufficient. Correct? Now, in pollution caused by burning coal and petroleum, these are the few things you need to remember. That this we done in the natural resources also. When we are talking about sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, they are involved in acid rain. Carbon monoxide is involved in the decreased oxygen carrying capacity, carboxyhemoglobin, poisonous gas. Clear? Carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas, global warming, melting of glaciers, sea level rising. And out of all the products, it is only water which is harmless. That's it. So this is all about our management of natural resources. I hope that because it is a very general topic, general chapter, 2 times reading is more than sufficient, and wherever a bit of the things are there, you need to do it 3 times in order to learn them. And obviously, quite obvious, quite clear cut, already known that in the next class we will be taking up the question answers of the management of natural resources. So it's better you all learn these, because this is my normal habit of advising also and of lecturing also, that you need to learn so that in the next class you can take more advantage as compared to those students who are just coming sitting idly and listening. If you are prepared, you will be participating, you will be checking your level, and it will be just a kind of normal routine revision exercise for you. Whereas for the student who is coming unprepared, he will be just like any other day, coming and listening, having no idea whatsoever what was being taught, because there is a gap of 1 or 2 days in between first and the second class, and that is sufficient for you to forget 50% of the things. Fine. So ending the session now. Next class we'll talk about the question answers. Please make sure that you learn. Fine. I want you all to come prepared. Let's see and let's hope for the best. So we'll meet you in the next class. Till then, take care of yourself, guys. Stay happy and stay healthy.